Welcome everyone to the Everyday Living Podcast. This is Jason with my lovely wife Holly.
Hello.
And we are excited. As you know, we've launched this podcast. It is live and unplugged. And we have many different topics that we want to cover. But one of them that we've got a lot of questions through the YouTube channel has been about our living conditions. People know that we live in a small house. It's actually a 2-bedroom house, and we have 6 kids all in one bedroom. We actually have the baby with us. Well, she's not a baby. Baby Zoe, we still call her baby, is 18 months. But she's a big girl. But she's with us. She'll eventually join the crew. And we have a 13-year-old.
She's in her own bed in a crib, but in our room.
I was going to break down the ages. Why don't you do that?
Okay. Samuel's 13. Hope is 11. Jeremiah is 9. Joanna will be 7 very soon. Isaac is 4. And then Zoe's in our room. So 5 kids that are 13 through 4 in one pretty small room.
Mm-hmm. It is.
We have various layers going on in there.
Yes.
Bunk beds and built-in beds. And
yes. I always say the environment we're growing up in, or the kids are, is joyful chaos. There's a lot of joy. There's a little chaotic at times. But what I love, and I guess we could just get right into this, some of the lessons and some of some of the values probably of why we live the way we live. Do you want to share?
Well, I think it's good to note that it's not like we're these people that chose to go live in a tiny home or something all intentionally. We didn't really quite choose this.
Mm-hmm.
We moved into this house when we only had 2 very small children and a dog, and I figured we'd probably outgrow this house by the time we had 3 or 4 kids. But we live in a really expensive place, and just can't really afford much more at this point. And yet, God just really seems to have us here and has had us here. We've been in this house 10 years, I think, almost 11 maybe. And it's been a really fertile ground for learning and growing in a lot of neat ways. So that's what we want to talk about a little bit today, just some of the revelation we've been able to have as a result of being in a small home. Which
I think, just so you guys know, like me and Holly both grew up with our own rooms. I had 2 sisters. Holly had 1 brother. So it's a lot different.
Yeah, you had, a 4-bedroom house, and I think I had usually 3-bedroom houses plus a playroom. And
yeah, but I mean, looking back on my childhood, I realized, not at the time, but I think I hid a lot in my room.
Yeah.
I was isolated from my family for different reasons, things going on in the environment too. But what I love about our house is no one hides. You can't hide.
You can't hide.
I don't think I ever remember one of the kids being like, I'm going to go to my room and spend time in my room.
Yeah, their room is really just for sleeping on a practical note.
Yeah.
They don't have clothes or toys or anything in there. We have kind of a community closet area and in a little laundry room that's like a built-on type room behind the kitchen that I'm sure people who have watched our videos have seen Joanna in there singing and working and stuff. So all their clothes are in there, which is really convenient because it's right by the laundry. And their toys they don't have a ton of toys, but most of them are outside in their playhouse.
We've outgrown this house in the sense that things have got pushed out. We have some sheds outside and
a lot of stuff's outside. It's nice we live in a good climate to make that work.
Yeah, but I think, just kind of getting into this, without me speaking for both of us, but one of our highest values is family, and it's just being together, loving each other, growing connection. And I think, realizing like this house has been such a challenge because even ourselves, we don't really have places to go. But in the best way, it causes us to interact all the time with each other. And it causes the siblings to learn how to work together, learning how to obviously, the word mine is really, it's a good word because we don't want to take away independence. So there is some stuff that's yours, but there's a lot of things that aren't yours. That's the whole family's, including just even the living room. It's not a place where people can just like put out all their stuff and hang out because we're sharing this place.
Yeah, so I think kind of zooming out a little bit, some of the things we've gotten to really learn through this type of living situation is just having our, like, the cultural values challenged, because there is such a, like, we live in such a culture where bigger is better, and yeah, having your own room, your own space, and there's definitely things that are really nice about that. We do hope one day to have a bigger house, and maybe everyone gets a little more space for their own things and that type of thing. Maybe there's a quiet area to go to when you need to just get away
We'll see.
Get away and read. It'll be a real small room, like a closet or something.
All right, there we go.
But I think more just this idea of what is culturally expected, and the reality is, you know, most of the world does not live like we do here in America. Most of the world
Really
does not have, you know, these big 3 and 4 bedroom houses, and they, a lot of times, especially when you look at historically, right, traditional societies, there were many people living in, like, even one room places, one hut or one room home, and the value was always people. Like, there was such a value to having a lot of children. People were super blessed when they had a lot of children. That was like the whole entire cultural value. And so I think being in this situation for us, we've just gotten to really be challenged with what really matters, right?
Totally.
What, you know, are people more important than space or possessions or having a nice house and a lot of room to spread out and a lot of room for all your stuff? It's kind of forced us into minimalism, right? I got into a kick on reading minimalism books. That's kind of one of my favorite things to read about. I don't do a great job living it yet, but I've really
You've grown. She's definitely.
I have really grown. I've
more
adopted.
of a collector than one of my little sayings is "When in doubt, toss it out." But
yeah, we definitely balance each other out in that, right? I'm more of a saver and collector, and Jason's definitely throws away.
But let me add this before we get into kind of minimalism talk. Is I think a huge life lesson for me and for Holly is just learning a life of contentment.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're honestly, like, I feel like I'm living the dream. I can't, you know, without sounding too, like, boastful or something, I didn't choose this life. Like, I really felt like God kind of, you know, Jehovah Sneaky just brought it onto us. Everything from pastoring and leading a church to being in a college town to having not one kid, but now 6 kids and probably more kids coming. Even a second golden retriever who I thought would be like our first, but he's a little different.
Nothing like our first.
But a big thing is just contentment, you know, and I love that Paul said he found the secret, you know, I'm talking about the Apostle Paul in the book of Philippians. He found the secret of life. Whether he had a lot or little, he found contentment. And I think that is a massive thing in a society that's always telling us we don't have enough, we're not enough, we need more, you know, fill in the blank, whatever we're missing, that we're lacking. It's just giving us that message when really, like, man, we have everything we need in so many ways with one another, you know, and I couldn't be more thankful watching my children growing up together, coming out, you know, in the morning, and most of them, if they're doing what they're supposed to, are on the couch reading their little Bible or hanging out in the room together. And it's just so much like joy. There's so much like laughter, and there's so much tension at times too.
Yeah, definitely contentment is a huge thing. And I think it's such a neat thing that we can testify to the fact that, like, if you'd asked me, you know, 10 years ago when we only still had 2 kids and first moved into this house, do you think that you could live here with 6 kids? I would have been like, heck no. Like, we for sure would need to move to a bigger place before we got to, you know, even 3 or 4 kids. I wouldn't have even thought it was actually possible, much less that I would have been able to, like, enjoy living in this house still at this point. And then God just really started to shift my attitude and perspective, even, I think, after we had 3 kids, because then I felt like that was probably in my original mind that was, we were maxing out in a 2-bedroom house, right? And a lot of people in America would say, no, you maxed out with the, first kid. You need to move to a 3-bedroom house. So I thought that was already me, like, being so stretched in my faith and like, oh, we can handle 3 kids in a 2-bedroom house. But yeah, at that point, like, God just really started to shift my perspective. And there's a lot more to that story that was a lot bigger than just the house we were living in and the size. But that was certainly part of it, just realizing, no, we can be in this house with more kids. I started thinking about how I could actually physically possibly fit like up to 8 kids in this house. And
we may one day, who knows?
Yeah, we may. But basically just to be able to say that it doesn't feel like we're living in lack, It doesn't feel like, there's
so rich,
times
actually.
when I'm tripping over the dog and 3 kids in the kitchen that I want to knock a wall out and expand it a couple feet. But like beyond that, it's not really like, this is so hard. Like, this isn't working. Like, God, when will you just release us from this? I have dreams. We have dreams in our hearts. Like, I really do have a dream to have a home that has like a full-on library in it and things like that would just make things run a little smoother in our home. But at the same time, like, I'm thankful all the time that we don't have more house to clean, because you have a bigger house, well, you have more house to clean. We're really still trying to learn how to steward and run this home with all the people in it. And I'm thankful that it's not bigger. In that sense, I'm thankful that there's just a few areas that they get messy real fast, but we have a lot of hands to help clean them up too. So I feel like there's also that component of stewardship, right? Like, faithful with little, faithful with much. We need to continue to just learn how to steward what we have now, so that God can entrust us with more, and learn how to be content with where we're at right now, so that we can learn how to be content when we're given more. Because I think that's the thing that's always been so hard. I've traveled a lot to other countries and been in other cultures, but I think just like realizing how so much of what we in America think we need to be happy doesn't bring happiness or contentment. There's still such a lack there in terms of the things that really matter with our hearts and with relationships and things like that.
Yeah, something, I think I would add too is, like, I think thankfulness is a big deal. And I think it's just realizing, wow, we've been given so much. We're actually so wealthy in God, with the children we've been given, the interactions we have, the meals we eat, probably 95% of our dinners together. Watching the kids outside, because they have to go outside. Our kids, if you've watched our videos, they're playing in the dirt, they're jumping on the trampoline, they're building forts, they're making swords. They got an imagination, because we don't have video games. We're not letting them sit before the television or on their iPad. They know they can go in the media on Saturday, but they have to, it's a long conversation, but they have to get tickets to be able to watch things. And but back to kind of my original thing, I just feel like thankfulness is everything. Like, you could look at our lives and see lack and kind of like get discouraged, or you could just be super thankful and grateful for what you've been given. And then what I see is just abundance.
Yeah.
I see fullness. Yeah. I see laughter. I see joy. I see so many aspects of God's children growing up together and learning so many life lessons, from everything, taking care of a home together, having jurisdictions, to working out their problems with their siblings, to I don't know, feels like the list would be endless on what our kids are growing up in. And that's actually a segue I'd love for you to kind of expand on this. What do you think it's like for our kids to grow up in this environment? Obviously we'd probably have them on here eventually to speak into this themselves, but
well, I would say, in keeping with the topic for today, because there's a lot of directions we could go in that would be good for other podcasts. But what's amazing is that our kids love this home. Like, this physical being in this 2-bedroom house. And we have a small yard, but it's pretty awesome, because my wonderful brother, he about 8 years ago built a playhouse for them out back. That's an awesome playhouse. So they're in that all the time, and the sandbox and the swing set and everything. So they love being outside. And anytime we've ever talked about moving one day, they're just, none of them want to move. They are like, well, no, unless we can take the playhouse and the sandbox and everything. So yeah, they love being here, and they don't, I mean, of course, part of it is they don't know anything different. It's what they've grown up in. But I think us knowing something different, we see how blessed they are, and we see how much they love it, and how there isn't lack, you know? I mean, yeah, sure, sometimes there's some vying for like new personal space or new playhouse or whatever.
That's the blessing of learning how to work through things,
yeah,
and learning how to surrender stuff and negotiate and all that stuff.
Yeah. And just, you know, getting to teach them, like we've had to learn how to, which is back more to the minimalism thing, right? Where it's like, instead of having our possessions own us, like really being intentional about how much do we need, what do we need, what do we really, you know, value and everything. And some of our kids, it's a little easier for. I mean, Joanna, she doesn't really play with toys. She doesn't like a lot of stuff. She loves clothes and she loves talking.
And shoes.
So, yeah. So she doesn't need much space. We have some that really are a little more attached to their things and their Legos and whatnot. But you know, it's nice that there are physical constraints to that too, that they have to, you know, pick and choose a little bit more what they're going to have or where they're going to have it, and have their own areas too to manage that are outside of the home that we don't have to deal with as much. So they do get to have that responsibility and ownership there. So yeah, there's just lots of really good things. And I mean, if you haven't ever read a book on minimalism, I would highly recommend it, because it's so eye-opening to just see from that perspective, like an intentional choice about living with less and how freeing that could be. Because I do think it's, I mean, I've just thought about it in my experience of like how much of our time, for the most part, for, you know, many people in Western culture, is taken up with just dealing with our stuff. Like whether it's getting it from the store, finding a new place to put it when we get it, putting it back in that place, sorting it out, like keeping clutter picked up, and then the emotional and mental drain that is, just dealing with that stuff all the time. And so I've really enjoyed being challenged in that way, and not having a bunch of unnecessary stuff around, and not having, you know, like 1,000 toys for our kids, because, and yeah, it's been really beautiful to watch how much their imagination is alive, because they are able to just be outside playing with sticks and dirt and leaves and building and making creations and forts and playing together, you know.
Yeah, anyone knows, you know, if you, the Lomelinos, we're known for, you know, if you're going to send your kids over here, you may want to put a helmet on them or something, because they're going to be running around. They're going to be having fun.
I think parents just know they better get ready to give their kids a bath and shake their clothes off when they get home. But part of that's that we don't have good grass. That
but part of it too is like kids are kids. They can care less about being clean. Most kids, I should say.
They love dirt.
And it's adults usually that want everything to be a certain way. And, you know, and I just, for me too, this kind of gets into our value system, which I touched on earlier, but relationships are everything for us. And I feel like that is what we want to foster, is good relationships with one another and how to work together. You know, I always say teamwork makes the dream work. And it really does. It takes the whole family to make this whole thing work, you know, in the sense of the way the home runs, to people cleaning up after themselves. And what's so cool when you're in a small house is it's hard and good is if one person's off, we all feel it like right away.
It's a lot of accountability.
Exactly. So there's a lot of having to work together and work through things, which is why, you know, one of these times people have been asking a lot lately on this, that we've been posting, but on our family meetings, what do you guys do? How long are these? What are you talking about? But every Tuesday we try to have a family meeting where we give, I'm not going to go into it, but everyone usually gets a voice in it and gets to share things, and we cover things. This last week we worked on our fire drill. in case there's ever a fire upstairs in that small little bedroom. How in the heck are we going to get these kids out? They thought that was really fun. I'm going to scare them in the middle of the night. I didn't tell you that. I'm going to set it off at like 2 in the morning and see how they do. My wife's looking at me like...
That does not sound like a good idea.
That's a dad thinking right there. I got to see how real it is.
That's a dad thinking. Mom's like, heck no, you don't wake him up in the middle of the night.
Anyway, anything else, sweetheart, that you want to add on to this topic of just living in a 2-bedroom home?
I mean, I guess this isn't really related to the size, but I think in terms of values of the home, something I know I really value is creativity. And so creating, like letting a home be a place where people feel comfortable and they can feel like they really live in it. And, that's definitely more my personality. It's like, I appreciate things being picked up and tidy, but I'm not going to obsess over them. I have to more work on that side of it. But I think something that is a real strength I carry with that is that people can feel safe and feel like they can be comfortable and they can live here and our kids can create here. And, and that's why it's like, yeah, go outside and play and get dirty. And I'm not going to freak out on you and, spray you off with a hose just because you're all dirty. And I think that it's funny because kids they love dirt. Like I just always think of our trampoline, right? So we got this trampoline and it didn't take long for them to start digging a big, huge dirt pit under the trampoline. And that's really like become a more loved place to play than even the trampoline is itself.
Yeah. Which, I mean, without us beating this thing is, freedom being a huge value that we want to foster. And I think often parents are so quick to squash the children's freedom, whether they're trying to dig a hole. Lately, what have they been creating on the side of the house? There's some creation going on the side of the house right now.
Building like a war bunker
thing. It sure is. And I'm just like, I'm not a big fan as a dad because of my little daughter. I'm like, if she falls in that, there could be some serious things. But apparently we don't let her out. I heard often during the day.
Dog.
Yeah.
We don't ever let her go out that,
yes. So
that
Gigi, for all the Gigi fans, she's going to be okay. Yeah. But, freedom is a big deal for us, and we want to see our kids be able to, like, explore, right?
Yeah. Yeah, of course you always create, like, limits and safety to that. But within those boundaries that you set up to, just create that freedom and allow fostering that creativity that they have. Because I think when it comes to parents squashing it, it's 9 times out of 10, it's just out of our own, like, either feeling a need to control or selfishness or how's this going to affect me? Like, it's going to make some mess that, it's going to affect me or stress me out. So I'm a big fan of let your kids paint. We do it mostly outside or...
Please, let's do it
go
outside.
Go ahead and put something down on the table before you let them go at it with paint. But,
yes.
But, letting them paint, letting them create, letting them build forts and just fun stuff like that.
Yeah, so important, so important.
Yeah.
It just makes me laugh when I think of my childhood because some of you could relate out here to this, where you had one room in the house. It was like the family room or living room, but you never were allowed to go in it. And it was like, looking back, I'm like, that was so weird. But when I think about it, I'm like, oh, my mom just wanted one room where she had complete control over the room. But in some ways, like, we couldn't fully live in that house. And I just love that about you, Holly, that you allow our kids to really live to the fullness, of their life. And, it's just amazing to watch how creative they are. I mean, you already kind of said that, but just the things that they get into, the stuff that they're making, rope swings, other random creations. I'm just like, really? You made that great, We always loved the story when our daughter Hope was like 2 or 3 years old, and she had a bunch of snails. She was in the snail fetish, and she was ripping the shells off of snails, like a lot of them on her lap. And we're just like, that's great, sweetheart. But it's like she was just exploring, and instead of ripping them out of her hands, it was like, all right, well, if that's what you're doing, then have fun doing that.
I think we did discourage that a little bit because it was a little sad for the snails.
Yeah.
But the time I like how Jeremiah built that crazy huge booby trap on the side of the house with a whole bunch of ropes
that was nuts.
And bamboo and bungee cords and stuff. I just couldn't even believe the amount of work and effort. This is the kid that, has a hard time sitting down and doing all of his homeschool, but he is a engineering mastermind. Mm-hmm. And it's good that he can have those opportunities to really express his creativity in all the things he builds, and he loves to climb and just be creative in his own way. He's an artist and an architect and sculptures. He
is, and you've helped bring that out by just letting him live his life, which I love. So anyway, that's probably good for this episode. But, just want to reiterate, there's so much to be thankful for. And one day, some of you have kids and you're just like, oh, I want this, I want that. And it's fine. We have dreams, we have desires, we have things we actually pray for and lift up. But at the end of the day, we're just thankful. We're grateful and thankful for all that God's given. The Bible says, what do we have that we haven't been given? So this home is a gift. We didn't even go into the story of how we got this house, but it was honestly just one of the greatest gifts we've been given, to live in this house, to grow so many memories together. And now just learning, again, every day it feels like it's an adjustment of how to live with 8 people and 2 dogs in a small 2-bedroom house. We clearly have not fully figured it out, but I think we're on the journey, right?
Yeah, we've come a long way.
We've come a long way. All right, so take care, everyone. Have a great day. And if you have any suggestions on episodes, feel free to send them our way. And this would be so nice of some of you out there. Leave us a review. One of those great reviews. But any review would be wonderful. The more reviews, the more people start checking it out. All right, take care.